the night I wasn't on her calendar. The first time I knew something was wrong, it was because of a calendar notification. It chimed on my phone at 18:07, a polite digital cough. Mara, conference room C, 6:08 p.m. We share calendars the way people leave toothbrushes, half convenience, half promise, so I didn't think much of it until I looked at my own phone again and saw the location pin. Her office had moved last month. Conference room C didn't exist anymore. There was a new system, glass pods named after constellations. The old building, the one with the humming elevators and the stale coffee lobby, had been left behind like a bad haircut. But the notification had the old address attached, and the map marker blinked on the wrong block like a misfired memory. I'm an audio designer. I build the sound of things people pretend not to notice, the whir under a neon sign, the breath of a city before dawn. It's a fraudulent life skill in love. You start hearing what someone is not saying deliberately, like they're leaving negative space the way painters do. That night, the negative space was a pinned location that shouldn't have pinned itself. She came home at 8:40 with wind in her hair and a cardigan that didn't belong to her, not because I knew all her clothes, but because the sleeves were too long in a way that said habit. It smelled faintly like cedar and a stranger's laundry. Mara kissed me and made it look like the easiest thing she'd done all day. Conference room C, I said, as casually as a knife left on a cutting board. Donor call, she answered, almost before I finished. They love old buildings and the board wanted nostalgia. They scheduled the nostalgia in the old address, I asked. She smiled with her eyes shut like a person hearing a song they know will save them. Evan, she said softly, which was both my name and a little prayer to behave. I didn't push. I know how to play the long take. We ate leftovers. We pretended to be the version of us that pauses for each other between playlists. Later, when sleep was an agreeing fiction, I felt her body turn away an inch at a time until she was her own coastline. In the morning, she wore the cardigan again, just to take the chill off, she said, shrugging into someone else's warmth the way you try on a story. I kissed the top of her head and tasted the future like a copper coin. There are moments a man chooses the ridiculous over the honest in the name of intelligence. Mine came that afternoon, when I walked to the old office building under the excuse of an errand I didn't have. The security guard had the same belly and a new crossword. The elevator still hummed like it believed in itself. On the fourth floor, conference room C remained exactly where my suspicion had placed it, behind a frosted panel with a brass letter that had lost its shine. The door opened to my knock because why shouldn't it? Inside, the table held a jug of flat water and two glasses, one with a red lipstick thumbprint, one with a tiny tidal ring as if the drinker had breathed too closely. The room smelled like air freshener and something human trying not to be found. I stood in the doorway and told myself nothing good comes of needing a detective badge for your own life. I didn't tell her I'd gone. I cooked that night, and the whole apartment smelled like tomato and basil, and she laughed at something on her phone with a sound she didn't give me enough. I could have asked to see. I could have asked her to sit beside me while we made a calendar event called Tell Me Every True Thing. I didn't. Instead, I found my own medicine, a weekend somewhere none of this had a pinned location. Let's get out of the city, I said. Remember that glass house by the river? The one with the terrible reviews about birds hitting the windows and the great reviews about the bathtub. I booked it for Saturday. Mara blinked and then smiled. You did, she asked, and there was such clean surprise in it I wanted to forgive her for things I couldn't name yet. That sounds perfect. My best friend Soren texted 30 seconds after. We share a group chat that used to be about music and became a shared neural pathway for everything else. Soren is a cinematographer, the kind who makes you see a person's face the way their mother once did. He is, above all, loyal to his own sense of beauty, which is a dangerous trait in friend or stranger. River Glasshouse, he wrote. I know the owner. Keys are in a lockbox under the east step. Bring your stupid microphones. There's a freight train at 2 a.m. that sounds like a throat clearing heaven. Staying the weekend, I replied. Then, because I am sometimes less than wise, I added, you should come Sunday. There's a second bedroom. His typing bubble appeared and disappeared like a nervous fish. You sure? He wrote. I was sure of nothing. Yeah, I wrote, and set the phone down with the force of a decision made out loud. Saturday smelled like rain trying to remember how to be confident. The glass house was exactly what the listing promised. A long rectangle of reflection nested among birches, a bathtub that looked like it had opinions, a kitchen that wanted us to pretend we were better versions of ourselves. The river threw itself forward half-heartedly, the way water pretends to choose its path. We poured wine we couldn't afford and stripped the city from our shoulders one layer at a time. This is where I tell you, because the platform will allow it, that I learned again how her back arches when she is ready to negotiate with her own breath. I learned the small gasp that means she remembers that I know her. I learned that tasting the skin at her hip is still an answer to questions I hate. Our hands were honest for a while. Later in the bath, she put her foot on my chest like a joke and then left it there like a claim. Don't ask me the question, she said, eyes closed. Ask me the other one. What other one? I asked, touching the chain at her ankle I hadn't seen before. Ask me what I'm afraid of, she said. What are you afraid of? I asked. That all my yesies turn into obligations, she said, and all my no's turn into apologies. It was not the answer I wanted. It was the answer she had. I kissed her ankle as if it could retune the room. We slept in a tangle that made language unnecessary, and when we woke, the morning pressed its face to the glass to see how we would behave. Soren arrived Sunday just after noon with his camera in a backpack like a habit he couldn't break. He wore the smile he wears when he's trying not to claim anything and ends up claiming the air anyway. He hugged me and held on one beat too long like a man who needed to borrow steadiness. He hugged Mara and made it normal. Train at 2, he said, but the bridge does a small moan at 1:45. It's the best part if you like foreplay. Mara laughed. It sounded like a coin in a fountain, small and willing. We walked the path to the river. Soren talked about light the way priests talk about forgiveness. Mara picked wildflowers and pretended not to evaluate us. I recorded the water being unapologetic. For a while, I was relieved of myself. Back at the house, Mara made coffee like a project proposal. Soren leaned against the far counter and watched the steam rise as if invited. He looked soft in a way he'd hate me for thinking. I looked at their reflections in the glass and felt the floor tilt. Tell me if I'm being paranoid, I said, too brightly. Ask me to stop being good at the wrong things. Evan, Soren said, voice warm, hand already up like a surrender. If we're making a confession, it should be in the right room. The right room, I asked. What does that even mean? The room where the glass looks like glass, he said, not a mirror. Mara put the coffee down. She lifted her chin the way she does before a difficult meeting, essentially asking the truth to come sit at the table but wipe its feet. I'm sorry, she said, and it was a sentence built to break softly. I should have told you sooner. Conference room C, I asked through a desert. She winced the small, honest way a person does when a pin finds a thumb. Once, she said, and then later not in a conference room. A mistake turned into a reason, and that's the dangerous part. With him, I looked at Soren, and the world did the lazy spin of a camera panning too slowly to catch the action. Soren took the blow like a man who had rehearsed being punched. Yes, he said, twice. Once when we were stupid enough to think a door locked equals a choice made. Once when we were too honest to hide in a room designed for hiding. I'm not going to make it pretty for you. I won't make it worse. I can only say I love you, which doesn't excuse anything and also explains too much. What did you love? I asked him. Her, me. The part where you get to prove you exist because you broke something you respected. He swallowed, and it looked like guilt learning how to stand. You, he said. Since college, in that stupid house where the heat never worked and we drank soup from mugs because we couldn't afford bowls. Loving you made me a better cameraman. It made me find light in places people gave up on. But that love didn't know where to go. Then Mara became a corridor where the feeling could walk without getting arrested. I'm sorry. That metaphor is bad. The doing was worse. The glass house had been built to forgive. The light poured in at angles that made tragedies look curated. I held onto the back of a chair because the floor was working a plan with gravity I hadn't approved. And you, I asked Mara, do you love him? I love you, she said, and then, after a careful breath, I loved the way he looked at you through me. That part is ugly. It's also the most honest. With him, I felt like I was holding a photograph of the best version of you, shy, stubborn, precise, up to the light. It doesn't justify anything. It only tells the truth of a decision I regret and would probably make again if I had stayed as lost as I was then. I wanted to be brave. I wanted to throw a glass and drop a title card on the scene that said, "We are done here." Instead, I noticed the small things because that's how I am built. The tremor in Soren's left ring finger, the way Mara's hair curled damp at her temples, the distant throat of the train starting a conversation with the bridge. I thought of my mother telling me once, when you forgive, do it with the good china or don't bother. I thought of the cardigan on Mara's shoulders the night she lied to me, and how she'd left it on our chair after, like a flag she didn't know which country it belonged to. You should go, I told Soren, voice steady enough to pass inspection. You should take your trained sound and your good intentions and your bad metaphors and go. I need to sit in this without your face telling me I'm being magnanimous. I'll go, he said, picking up the backpack. He didn't reach for either of us. I will be where you tell me to be when you decide who I am to you. He slipped out. The door made the soft click that means a person is giving you privacy even if they don't want to. Mara stood with her hands around a mug and looked at me like a person watching for a weather change. I don't know how to be clever about this, she said. I can list the facts until they look like safety. I can tell you where and when and how often and what we said at the end. But what I owe you is not a transcript. It's time. You owe me both, I said. Time and the transcript. I don't get calmer if I'm assigned ignorance. Her laugh was a short, unfunny thing. I know. The worst part is that you'll want the audio, the part where my breath changes. You'll hear it forever even if you never hear it once. The train grew a voice. It hit the bridge and the glass house sang with it, a trembling hum that ran through the floor and up our legs. We stood in that sound like it could purify us. Sit, I said, finally. Tell me the version where I can still cook you dinner tomorrow. And then tell me the version where I bring your plants to Soren's place and leave the keys on the counter. I need both to be true long enough to pick one without flinching. She did. She told me the calendar times and the door codes and the jokes they made when they were pretending the world owed them a privacy it didn't. She told me the song that played on a cheap Bluetooth speaker because neither of them could stand silence. She told me she cried after, not because she hated him, but because she hated that she'd used him as a mirror for something I should have seen. She said the word sorry as if she had consulted a doctor on dosage. At some point, without deciding to, I reached across the table and put my hand over the mug, and her fingers found mine, and our hands were a small agreement in a big storm. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a truce. The difference matters. We walked the river path again as evening muscle memory tried to reassert itself. She took my arm like a person auditioning for a part she might not get. The glass turned pink with the last light. A pair of birds hit the window and recovered, furious with the idea of reflection. It was funny, and then not. Back inside, we didn't touch in the way movies want us to. We sat on the floor with our backs to the bed, shoulders not quite together, breathing like a metronome that needed tuning. She fell asleep first, her head tipped toward me, mouth parted the way it does when she's been brave too long. I stayed awake and counted the seconds between the river and the road. At dawn, I wrote a calendar event and invited her. Breakfast truth, 8 a.m. location. Our kitchen, not a room that was ever meant to hide anyone. In the notes I wrote, tell me again. I might remember it better. I didn't add Soren. I did text him one sentence. Send me the train at 2 a.m. He replied with a link, and the heart he uses when he's being a coward about saying love. We drove back to the city when the roads were still generous. In the elevator up to our apartment, she leaned into my shoulder like she used to after long days, and I didn't shrug her off because sometimes dignity is just another calendar you can reschedule. At home, she put the borrowed cardigan on the chair without thinking, and I picked it up and folded it with the kind of gentleness that makes men look better than they are. I don't know what we'll choose after breakfast. I know we'll make eggs too carefully. I will listen with my bones and try not to turn each pause into evidence. I will be the man who hates being humiliated, and the man who hates losing a friend, and the man who loves a woman who gave me the bad version and the good one because she respects the difference. I will probably cry in a way that makes me look like I'm telling a joke. When she wakes, I'll pour the coffee and hand her a real cup and not the travel mug. I will ask her to put the cardigan on if she wants, because I refuse to live in a house where objects carry more meaning than choices. If she asks me whether I still want to go to the glass house again someday, I will say, yes, if the birds forgive the windows, if the river keeps being honest about where it goes, if we can write an event called We Stayed and mean it enough to click accept without looking at the map.